Did you know prototyping can happen directly within an org? Let's learn more in episode 4 of Be an Innovator with Design.
Awesome admin.
If you've been following along, you know we are discovering how to redesign that account page to give our users a 360-degree view of their customer, leveraging principles of relationship design. So far, we've discussed the first 3 phases of design thinking: empathy, defining the problem, and ideation. For episode 4, I'm excited to hear from Leanne and Adam about the 4th phase of design thinking, prototyping.
Thanks, Rebecca. So Rebecca shared the stages we have covered so far, and I'm so excited to get hands-on with some building today with my favorite phase, prototyping. Adam, tell us more about what we're going to do in the prototyping phase.
That's right, Leanne. The prototyping phase is where things really start to get real. It's where you might also start to feel your first frustrations and constraints in your ideas. And this is a completely normal part of design. There are many different ways of prototyping from low to high fidelity. The goal is to begin to get a feel for what the end experience will feel like, but with little investment or time or code. Just a quick overview of the 3 types of prototyping is a low fidelity prototype is typically a wireframe or a sketch on paper or a whiteboard. A mid-fidelity prototype starts to feel more real. It can contain some, elements like images and words, but it's largely focused on an app or a page layout. Often tools used here is like Sketch and Adobe. High fidelity prototype, which is what we're going to do today, is an interactive experience. It's built closer to what the actual app will look like. And in our case, it is the actual app. We're going to do it right in a DE org.
So prototyping really helps us test the ideas that we generated in the ideation phase in a low risk and highly iterative manner before spending time and money developing. I really love this approach as a way to explore new ideas in a hands-on manner.
That's right. It saves time on tech and design debt in the long run. Some common benefits companies will realize over time is that they'll see greater efficiency and faster time to market and to launch, lower product development costs. Again, we're doing it right in a DE org. Thorough product testing, fewer redesigns, and just ultimately more user-friendly products.
So now we're ready to get hands-on together and start prototyping in our demo scenario. In this demo experience, we're starting with a brand new Salesforce environment that has not been customized for our end users. You can use your Trailhead Playground or a free developer environment or your sandbox for these exercises. Just make sure you aren't prototyping ideas in production. So I'm here in my demo environment in Setup. First, I want to show you how I'm identifying my 2 prototype pages. In the App Manager part of Setup, I've created 2 apps, Prototype 1 and Prototype 2. So I open an account page in Prototype 1 and I go into the App Builder, Edit Page. In this prototype, we wanted to explore using different related lists and making those enhanced. So I'm on the App Builder page and I can see my large related list multiple component in the middle here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the standard component related list single to bring over some specific related lists and really drill into what related objects my users need to see. I'm also going to make these enhanced related lists to give my users even more power over what they're doing with related records on the page. A fun trick when you're adding multiple components of the same type is that you can actually do copy and paste just to add duplicate components and then change the related list object. Now, I also wanted to define what people see based on the record. So I've added my contract related list single, and I'm going to go ahead and make that visible only when the account is not a prospect. So I've set the component visibility there, and now I can remove my larger related list multiple component. Now, when I'm finished updating this page with a rough draft of my prototype, I'm going to save it and activate it and assign it as the app default for Prototype 1. This will just make it really easy in my developer or sandbox environment to keep track of which prototype is which when I'm gathering feedback from end users. Now I can visit my Prototype 1 page and see those individual enhanced related lists as well as that conditional component for contracts. Now I'm in prototype 2, and I click into the account page, and I'm going to go again to App Builder to edit the page. So in this prototype, we wanted to explore splitting up the page into more tabs and sections. So first, I'm going to add a tab. I click on the tabs component, and on the right, I can add a custom tab to the tabs I already have. We're going to call this one Contacts. Now, when I click into that Contacts tab, it's empty, but I can add that related list single and select for contacts. Awesome. So I've added my additional tab to get feedback on from my users. I also want to break up the page into sections. Now, because this is a standard object, we're going to go into the page layout editor to break up sections. However, if you're in a custom object, you can do this right in App Builder. So I'm in the page layout editor for account, and I can go ahead and create sections like contact info and drag in some specific fields for that. And let's also create another section for business information. When you have a lot of fields on the details area of a record, it can be very handy to add multiple field sections to help your users navigate through all of that text. Now I'm going to quick save that and go back to my App Builder page. And I clicked refresh, and now I can see those sections and I have my contacts tab. So this page I'm going to assign to prototype 2 and click next, desktop and phone, and save. So now when I go back, it's easy to toggle between my two apps and really look at those two pages for prototype 1 and prototype 2. Okay, great. So Adam, I built my two prototypes and I saved them in my org under my two apps. Next, I want to share this with my users and gather feedback.
Yes, this is where we reconnect with the same users and stakeholders that have been participating in our previous design phases. To do this, it could be as simple as sharing screenshots or your sandbox logins to these individuals. You can gather feedback in any way that works for you, over chat, over email, a focus group, or schedule one-on-one time to review the prototypes and collect feedback. The most important thing is to share the prototypes that you built from these ideas so that we have this feedback and buy-in to proceed to the next phase.
So as we're sharing these two prototypes, what do we do if we get positive feedback about elements that exist in both the prototypes?
Yeah, absolutely. This is super common. Often final solutions are a combination of multiple prototypes or aspects from each of the prototypes. Totally normal.
Awesome. So today what we did together was build those two top ideas from our last episode in the ideation phase and build them into prototype pages in our developer environment or our sandbox. Then once we built those pages, we shared them with our team for feedback. If you're working with your users or colleagues throughout this project, this is a great time to share those prototypes. But if you are working on these episodes solo, go through this page building process and consider what works and what doesn't work about each idea or page. Try going through the steps that a user may go through in their day-to-day workflow and think about how much scrolling and clicking and toggling around the page is required. Back to you, Rebecca.
I think prototyping may be my favorite phase too, Leanne. All right, so to summarize some key takeaways from this episode, 1, prototyping can come in low, medium, or high fidelity. Use each depending on the use case. For example, for those of you who joined us last year for An Innovator, you may remember that we did some medium fidelity prototyping when we were sketching out our record page in a Google slide before we went to go build it. Some other takeaways: prototyping can save development costs, improve the user experience, and reduce future redesigns. So no reason not to do this. And lastly, we can do some rapid prototyping directly in a DE org. We can get hands-on. All right, so now it's your turn. So use a developer edition or sandbox or a Trailhead Playground to build 2 brand new pages based on your 2 prototype ideas. And you can base those on your ideas if you've been following along with these exercises, or follow along and build what we're building. And then share your 2 beautiful prototypes with us on Twitter using the hashtag #BeAnInnovator. And you can dive deeper into these topics with the app design and prototyping and UX prototyping basics modules listed in the Trailmix. And then join us for episode 5 of Be an Innovator with Design, where we will learn how to build and roll out.